All right, you're live.
They like the new field?
If you want to do it, you can. It's only a couple
I can.
slides. It's only a couple slides.
Catch anything? From Saturday night?
I got a skull.
On Saturday?
I got a precious big as my hand. It's huge. Shouldn't move. Is that good?
James and Taylor went to our pond yesterday afternoon and kind of visited. Okay, here, we figured one of those tall tales. Next thing we know, here they come with a catfish like this big. And we said, you really want this catfish out of our pond, you know, because it flipped. It's that little about 3 or 4 years ago, like the whole pond was just covered. And so we kind of lost everything in it. And so where this thing came from, I don't know, but we had catfish.
I guess we're ready. Yeah, Scott, ready? Okay.
All right, so this is a budget workshop for revenues. This is one of those things that, as my slideshow, as my PowerPoint presents, yes, I did it on purpose. It's pretty much all over the place because that's what school funding is right now. We're waiting on the legislative session to come in and go through and do what they do. And so all financial people are sitting there waiting to see what's going to happen. Next slide. I just kind of want you to see, this is what I do. This is the template. I always talk about the template, so I said, well, I'm telling you what, I'm going to show you all the template. So this is where we enter all the data, and this pretty much spits out what we are going to get. And so, as you see, this number right here, that's from last year. That was our ADA last year, 1371.51. So this year, as of the 4-6 weeks, we're at 1,375.108. It's a little bit off because what they're doing is they're doing something that's called hold harmless. Our hold harmless number is 1,369 and 93 thousandths. So 1,369.093. And what that does is if you fall below that mark, you get those numbers. Now, I'm going to show you something in a second that kind of makes it weird because what you do is that's like an average of the last 3 years. And so the first 6 weeks we were 1,374 and 2,200. So we got the actual numbers from our ADA. The second 6 weeks we were 1,385 and 6,200. So we got our exact numbers. Well, the third 6 weeks, we had a rough 6 weeks, it dropped down to 1,363.16. So we got the hold harmless numbers. 4 6 weeks, we're back up to 1,374.55. So our ADA is all over the place. And if you look at this number right here is from when we had Five Oaks Residential Placement Facility. So what it's telling us is it took our average and put a number in there. So we are going to get 2.253 possibly. It's going to go down with each 6 weeks because every time I put a 6 weeks in, it's going to go down a little bit because it's an average. Unless our hold harmless goes below 1369, then we're going to see more there. So this number, I kind of, a lot of people are asking, well, what if we don't want? What if our other numbers are pretty good? What if, like our CTE numbers? We're down a little bit because our CTE numbers for the last 3 years have been rising. So when we got that hold harmless, we got 1369 instead of 1363 on our ADA, but it's affecting other numbers. And so, not by a lot, it pretty much evens out, but I just thought that was kind of different. This number right here, right now, we're held harmless for those numbers too. We're getting the numbers that we had at the beginning of the year, so those are gonna stay the same. But next year, if we don't get it's from our free and reduced lunch applications is basically what it's from. If we don't get those back in, then we're going to see a decrease in that number if they don't decide something in the legislative session. So I just kind of wanted you to see, this is what is through the 4-6 weeks. This is what I'm estimating. I'm hoping that our ADA is going to go back up next year. You know, I'm hoping this is all kind of settled, and I'm kind of hoping this number's low. I'm waiting to see how our 4th and 5th 6 weeks turns out. So I'm hoping that number's low because that's the number that's going to decide if our funding goes up or down. Our property taxes, not so much, and I'll discuss that go to the next slide. So on our property taxes, this is an estimate. TASBO puts out a template where you put your numbers in, and so your T2 values right now with our formula transition grant, it's really only affecting how much of formula transition grant we're getting. It's not really affecting us too much. The M&O tax rate that we can charge, one template that I ran said that we're gonna have to go down to 0.9587. So again, that number affects a little bit, but you're getting offset by state aid. So these numbers aren't going to be they're not gonna affect your bottom line by anything. It's gonna affect how much you get on formula transition grant, which does matter because in about 3 years, we're gonna have to do something to match that funding if ours doesn't go up somewhere, if our ADA doesn't go up. Every time ADA goes up, our formula transition grant goes down because you're getting your money for your students. All right, next slide. All right, on the next one. All right, here's the formula transition number. This 543.3036. All right, so I called Robert Mays at the CAD and I asked him, I said, where are we standing right now? He said, you're looking at about a $51 million increase in values. Well, a $51 million increase, I was like, well, if I go 30 million, if I go 30 million, am I pretty safe? Because we still haven't had any of our protests or reviews, or that hasn't really gone through, and some things can get affected still, like your utilities, your oil and gas. So I said, okay, I'm gonna use 30 million. He said, you're pretty safe if you use 30 million. So this is what our formula transition grant is at 30 million. Now, if it really goes up 50 million, that formula transition grant goes down to about 300,000. It doesn't affect this number. This number right here stays the same. So our property values going up or down is not going to affect our bottom line number, our total revenue. It's going to affect our formula transition grant. What affects this number is our ADA. So that's where we got to focus on making sure we get our kids back in the classroom, making sure our attendance goes back up, and so that's where our focus needs to be. All right. So the next slide. So this is just kind of my estimate of values because, all right, this is again using the $30 million increase, and so that's our M&O taxes and our delinquent taxes, our penalty interest taxes. The penalty and interest, this is one place where it's been more, and so I'm thinking, that's one place that we will see an increase on that one. 20,000 is probably a conservative number, but again, it's always one of those nerve-wracking numbers to, the business managers before me didn't budget this number at all. So I put a number in there just because I think you need to, because you need to budget some of it. I just don't know how much. It's never a comfortable feeling on that one. Pre-K this year, we've done pretty well so far, and so I feel like it's gonna stay. So I up that. The interest, we're going out for bank depository. They're due April 22nd. So depending on what kind of interest we're gonna get from this could really affect this number. So you could see this number go up or down, because right now we're getting around 100,000 at the end of the year. That's about what we'll get. So that number could be affected either way. Facilities use, with the addition of the soccer and softball, we're starting to use facilities way more. So I up that. Athletic revenue. We were, at $70,000 not that long ago, and this year we're gonna be pushing right around the $30,000, $35,000 mark. And so it's gone down. I think it's gonna go up. I think it's probably gonna go up more than that, but again, right now I'm just being conservative early. So I'm hoping to see where I can go back up to where we were, because this is what we earned the year before, and so hopefully we can see that number go up. And then SHARs, it's gonna be around the $300,000 mark. It's gonna be a little more than that probably too. And then, like I said, these two asterisk numbers, they really get affected by your CAD or your attendance, and those numbers could change also. The bottom line right now, I feel conservatively, we're gonna go up 160,000. That's conservative. I'm thinking more along the lines of the 200,000 plus is where we're gonna be. But right now, I'm saying conservatively, I think we're in good shape on the 160,000. Then food service, this has been a rough year again. We haven't had a whole lot of meals, being served, but it's one of those things that they're starting to increase now already. I can see the numbers going up now. So if they continue to go up, then I think we can go back up a little bit on some of them, because our federal funding is going up a lot. And so hopefully that stays in the course. These numbers may get flipped around a little bit depending on what they decide to do with the free and reduced meals. And then the taxes, this is just going with the 30 million conservative number. That's what our tax collections should be at 0.9603 and 30 million. Before we go on to the next slide, any questions about this? Anybody? This public meeting, if you got a question, you can ask, anybody can ask.
Has taxes gone up over the past 5 years? Do you feel like it would go down at all, or?
And see, the tax, what happened was, at one point in time, they were $1.04, and then we dropped M&O to 97 cents. And so when they dropped it to 97 cents, they called it, they're going to match with state revenue. So like right here, they're gonna match with state revenue whatever happened on the CAD side, they were gonna match it with state revenue, because they made you drop from $1.04 to 97. And then they made us go from 97 to 0.9603. So this year, they were gonna make it drop down again, but they pretty much held it the same. So depending if our property values go up 30 million or 50 million, if they go up 50 million, then we gotta drop it down to 0.9587. And so our property values our value has been going up. Our rate has not been going up, our values have been going up. One number we're gonna have to look at is right here, because this number right here is going to be more than what we need. So we're definitely going to need to probably look at, maybe going down to 10 cents instead of 11 cents on the INS side. That is gonna be one that we're going to have to look at when property values come out. We're gonna have to look at that number. Any other questions? If not, last slide. Our concerns, ADA, that's the biggest concern. If we can get kids here, our money goes up. Property values, not as much of a concern, other than future forecasts. Legislative session, the bills going through. Right now, most of the bills are showing they're gonna fully fund House Bill 3. So that's a positive thing, because they upped House Bill 3, made you come up and increase salaries and do all these other things. And then all of a sudden you get a legislative session, they can take that all away, and then you're stuck with having to make a decision on what you're gonna do. But right now, they're still saying they're gonna fully fund that. And so that's about it for the revenues projection right now, as we speak. Anything else? If not,
Question for both of you. I mean, with the ADA, the kids participating online can still count into the.
They can.
It's just the
Well, what
challenge of getting them to do it.
Yeah, so what we're finding is there's two problems. One, it's very hard to, because kids will remote in, but we don't check them until Friday because we do it asynchronously. So the teachers have to go in, and it's a lot. We don't have that many kids that are doing that, but there are so many kids that we just lost. And it's not just us, it's everywhere. Whose kids, they never came online. They never were part of anything, and we don't know, nobody knows where they are. We don't have their phones, or it's kids that have just done nothing. So for the kids who have been here, we pretty much get them, but we lost, I
Do
don't
you
know.
do you know what that percentage is? I mean,
Probably about 60 to 70 kids, I think, we can't find where they.
I mean, that was last time we checked, about the middle of the year, right, the second semester.
About 70? Or
60.
60. I know, so if you think about 60 kids at $5,000, give or take, right? That's
$6,000. Yep.
$6,000, so that's $360,000 that we're short because.
Is it like 60 to 70 evenly across the board, more older, more younger? I mean, do y'all see a correlation in there?
Yeah, Miller?
So it was the older ones. I mean, it was high school students. I would say the larger percentage of that. I would say middle school, junior high, and was they did well, and then the second one was elementary. And it was the younger ones. It was a lot of the preschool students that we were anticipating. They just didn't come this year. So we might see them, I mean, in kindergarten next year, but our pre-K numbers from years past have really dropped.
Our paying pre-K students came, but our free pre-K students, we were down. That's what was so strange. Our free pre-K numbers were down, but our paying was up.
We were just talking about we're going to home visits, counselors and APs are gonna go in the high school, because we can't get a hold of some of these kiddos, and then we're finding out they're not actually living with their parents. It's been challenging trying to find them.
Thank you.
And with that, I'll close the budget workshop. And then if we can all stand, please, now for the invocation. Mr. Toy.
If you would, join me in prayer. Almighty God, as we gather here this evening, we thank you for this day and the opportunity to come together as a community to plan and discuss the needs of our district. We especially give thanks that we live in a place where we have a say in the governance of our school system, for we know there are many who have no such right. Help us to respect and honor that right with good and moral choices, as well as with civil and honest debate. We ask for knowledge and wisdom to make fair and balanced decisions that are in the best interests of our staff, community, and most importantly, our students. Help us to remember the least of our brothers and sisters among us, and to be compassionate and supportive in a manner that gives hope to all affected. Send your Spirit to guide us as we seek your will in every decision we make tonight. May our lips proclaim your greatness. May our hands willingly do your work. May our feet lead others to you. And may all we say and do bring glory to you, who created all that is good in this world. Amen.
Followed by pledge allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I, the Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you. Thanks, Russ.
Thanks, Rusty. Okay, we call this meeting of the Columbus Independent School District to order. Let the record show that a quorum of board members is present and that this meeting has been duly called and the notice of the meeting has been posted in accordance with Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code Chapter 551. Any public participation today?
No, sir. No.
None today, okay. Moving on to campus reports, community, number 5, letter A, campus reports. Any good? Anybody have any questions on campus reports or financial reports? Okay, then we'll move on to number 6, consent agenda. Do we have any donations this month?
We do. We got the local chapter of the Daughters of the Republic of Texas donated Texas history items to the elementary library. The junior high PTO donated a new line True Touch 75-inch RS interactive flat panel with onboard computer and True Touch mobile stand. The Texas Association of Retired Teachers donated $40 to the CJHS library to purchase some books. Phyllis Tolliver and Pamela Thomas donated masks for students at the junior high. And HEB donated $100 worth of groceries towards an incentive plan for students to finish their credits at CAS. CAS students will be given barbecue hamburgers every time a student finishes with credits toward their graduation.
Thank you to all of them. And then expenditures in excess of $25,000. You want to pull that one up too? You want to talk about that one?
So I think we have the Bays Achievement Center, $57,751. Those are the 3 kids that we have in Huntsville. One will be will be off, I guess, as of May.
We're hoping June.
So,
I think their last day is like June 6th or
6th.
something like that.
Okay, that's it. All right. And then, so with that, I'll need a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll move we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Scott moves.
A second.
Dorothy seconds. All in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. This leads to number 7, regular business action items. Letter A, discussion of possible action regarding the approval of the 2021-2022 salary schedules for administrative/professional pay groups. Mr. Leopold.
We kind of want to share, we're going to tag team this because we kind of want to show you how we got to it. And we shared this with our committee last month, and we just wanted to show you how we got to the changes that we did. Our goal has always been to try to get us up to par with people around us. So Scott actually got the average salary for all the positions that we're going to have today from Region 3 schools. He also did it from districts who are relatively close to our size, which are between 1,200 and 1,800 students. And then competing districts, which would include districts around the Sealy, LaGrange, Weimar, Rice. And then we did an average of those 3, and we were able to then look at boxes, the minimum, the median, the low, the minimum, the median, and the maximum. So we look at the Director of Transportation. So in Region 3 schools, you can see that number 230. That's the number of days that Region 3 schools have their Director of Transportation work. They gave a minimum salary number, a midpoint, and a maximum. Schools that look like us, they have their Director of Transportation work a little bit less, but their salary is considerably less. And knowing that Region 3 schools have Victoria, which is a very large district, so the district air transportation director does substantial because he's probably working with over 100 buses. Whereas schools that look like us have a lower set threshold. Competing area ISDs, which is around our area, they work 243 days. So you notice that their salary is a little bit higher than the region center, but they work more days. So we did the average of the three, and the average of the three showed that the average director of transportation works 233 days. There was a minimum, midpoint, and maximum. So we decided that we should focus on trying to get close to the average, and we did. We require our director of transportation to work 240 days, and because of that, we went slightly above in both the average, minimum, midpoint, and maximum. So that's going to be the salary scale that we'll approve, that you'll approve. Director of Child Nutrition, Region 3 schools, the minimum, midpoint, and maximum. Now, I want to stress this, that Director of Child Nutrition in big districts are required to have college degrees, and in some cases, advanced college degrees. It was, I don't know, Scott, you can tell me how long ago it was, but we were grandfathered in. If you had a Director of Child Nutrition who did not have a college degree, you could be grandfathered in. However, if that person leaves, then you have to hire somebody with a college degree. So when that happens, that rate goes up considerably. So schools that look like us have a minimum salary much lower than Region 3 schools.
And how many schools did you look at? Each category? I know it has to vary, but
Yeah,
like
so
Region
it-
3 has roughly how many?
It varies on how many filled out the TASB salary study. I could maybe pull it up off the drive, but it varied depending on the job too, because some other schools don't have, the same positions we have, but I would be guessing until I get that number.
That's fine, just like.
I'll look it up.
I would say it was in the 20s
I'd
at
say-
least, at least.
So it's comparable.
And the competing area ISDs are just locally, so it's not as many people that we're comparing to. And you can see that again, you're looking at Sealy. Did you look at Belleville? Who are
I don't think Belleville did it. I don't think Belleville filled it out. But I know it was like Sealy, LaGrange, Weimer, Rice. But again, some of these schools only filled out one or two job positions and didn't fill out the whole survey. So that's why it varied with each one.
So when we looked at the average was just slightly above Region 3 schools. But again, both competing area ISDs and Region 3 schools, again, have the college degree person. So we raised our salary from where it was to reflect more of the 1,200 to 1,800 schools, people who look like us, which was a significant, I think 3% or 4% from where we were in the previous. A network administrator, everyone had their network administrator working 226 days. We did not. Lance worked a lot more than that. So we thought the thing we need to do is to get close to the average of all and get our network administrator on a contract that reflects what everybody else is doing. Our director of maintenance, and in some cases, in some of the districts, and you can see the difference in the number of days that they work, in some of the districts, the director of maintenance also was a director of transportation. So that's why it was tough to get accurate readings on both. But the average in days was about 246. We moved Kenny to right where our schools that look like us are, and put our salary just slightly below the average of all because we're working 6 less days. Our junior high counselor, all schools had their counselors around 200, Region 3 had 207, schools that look like us had 207. Competing area ISDs had 202, the average is 205, and Amber, I think we were 215?
Yes.
So to get closer to the salary range, what we did is we lowered days. We lowered 5 days to get to 210 to make it more reflective of a calendar that competing counselors have, and kept the salary, raised the salary up to 52.
Just to give a little answer to Region 3, like Principal's Elementary, 18 districts replied, and then Principal High School, 21 districts, and Principal Middle School, 13. So it all depends on what Amber and I fill out the survey on for us, and it's all depends on what their person wanted to fill out. Some of them decided not to put their middle school principal in there. Some of them didn't have a middle school or high school principal. Some, these are, like Viscerod is only, I think, through 8th grade, and so they didn't have a high school. So it all depends on what they filled out. But that's just to give you kind of an estimate. Sorry, okay?
Actually, Weimer has has two principals, right? They have a junior high school principal, and then they have an elementary principal. So a lot of school districts have it. That's why we'd have less at the middle school number. Elementary counselors, we noticed that we wanted to get our days more reflective, because I think we had her at, how many days?
210 on this one.
We had her at 210, so we brought her down more to what competing districts are doing and kept her salary close to the average of all. Occupational therapist, and this is kind of a caveat too. Our occupational therapist only works 140 days by choice, not by requirement. So we prorated her salary to reflect the average of all. But at 140 days, it looks significantly less, but that's why. It's 50 less days, 53 less days. High school counselors, there's a little bit of difference in days, but you can see that the minimum salary on counselors around us was a point that we were very cognizant of. And the average of all three, we tried to stay as close to the midpoint as we possibly could. So our counselors are more towards the midpoint and the maximum, heading that way. So we felt it was more important to reward them that way. So you can see our maximum salary is at or above the average wall. Sped counselor, well, so this is going to be easy because we are the only district that has a sped counselor, and it's based on 100. So it's really the counselor's salary, but instead of 215 days, it's based on 192 days. So it's almost 25 less days. The diagnostician, our diags, we notice that Region 3 schools have them work 190 days. Schools that look like us have them work 197 days. Competing area ISDs have them 197 days. The average of everybody is about 195. And we have our diags at 200. We had them at
202.
202. So we lowered their days and kept their salary, and then we moved it up with the raise to reflect the average of all. Speech pathologist, and it's really the number of days. We try to reflect the average of all. I think we're pretty fair. Assistant principal, elementary. So what we were looking at really was the number of days that we had our admin team working. We moved it from 215, I think, to 210.
Correct. To
reflect what everybody else has, and was able to. So we increased the salary, I mean the 2% midpoint raise plus whatever we did to adjust, made a salary adjustment, but then we lowered the amount of days too without taking the salary away. So it's a kind of a less days and more money. But it made us more reflective than everybody else around us. I think that the important thing to look at is that a lot of this came from being part of that whole TASB staffing study allowed us to have a lot of access to a lot of things that really paid a great deal of value to us now. Assistant principal at the junior high. And we did the same thing there. We went from 215 to 210. And our junior high assistant principal is close to the maximum, has many years experience. But we may want it to be as reflective as possible to everybody around us. Assistant principal at the high school, more responsibilities, additional days. We have ours work 215 days. And because of those 5 additional days, we bumped the minimum salary. Consequently, they also have a lot more after-school duties. Band director. That's kind of the average of everyone, and we are slightly below the midpoint and maximum, but they're working less days. Principal alternative, and this is another one that's, so alternative principals, depending on the districts that have this, some of them have teachers to supervise, they have assistant principals that actually work there too, so it's an unfair grouping because our alternative school is very small, so we actually looked at what people who look like us do. Much more than we looked at the average because Victoria graduates maybe 150 kids from their alternative campus. So they have numerous teachers. That principal has an assistant principal, and I believe they have 9 teachers. So it's a lot different. Plus, they may have responsibilities after. Our principal does not have any duties or responsibilities afterwards. And again, with a lot of experience, we worked on the maximum salary. Elementary principal, which we wanted to make sure that we had our elementary principal fairly compensated, and we took the average and made sure our days were the same. So you can see that significant change there. Principal at junior high. Same thing there. We look at the average. Director of technology. Not everybody has a director, but everybody has them work 226 days that do, and we, because this is new to us, we increased that days, although he's probably here all the time anyway, but now at least he gets paid for it. Director of special programs. So we were right around the average of all. Director of Human Resources. And again, this being a new position, and if all of a sudden, you know, we looked at the competing area ISDs, and you have bigger school districts who have a elaborate HR system. We have Amber and Anella, so we're just building that. But we looked at the average around us, and then kept it at the exact, or moved up, and we're closer to the midpoint. That's an area that as we grow, this will end up growing. But we wanted to keep it close to schools that look like us and have the position. Director of Athletics. Keeping it very close to the average of all. Director of Curriculum Instruction, not everybody has this, so what we looked at is the Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum and Instruction. So again, because we looked at people who have, not as many people reported, so when you look at Region 3 school, 3, having Victoria, having large districts, Wharton, it skews it a little, but we wanted to keep it close to people who look like us, and will be an area that we will consistently try to raise to get to people we're competing with. Chief Financial Officer. Same thing, it's an area that we looked at the average, tried to get as close to the averages as we felt safe, and then we'll move towards getting it to the average of all three in over a period of a couple of years. Principal at the high school, exact same thing. So from that,
All right, from that, on your board note, the recommendation that we're asking for is that you, the administration recommends the approval of 2021-2022 administrative salary schedule for administrative professional pay groups containing a 2% midpoint general pay increase accompanied by adjustments from the pay scale changes. And what that adjustment means, just want to go over it, and because we're asking for a total of $63,380. Our typical raise, if we just did 2%, would be $42,670. So we're asking for a little bit more, and I can tell you in some of the areas, I can go over each one if we need to, but some of the areas are like, you know, just with the change in days, like Director of Technology is one. With the change in days, that took up, you know, nearly half of the raises because we got to pay him for 11 more days, and we got to pay him for a different, you know, a different salary scale than what we were paying him at. And so the ranges were like from 1.8. And you said, well, we give him a 2% raise. It's 2% off the midpoint. If you're above the midpoint, then you don't get the full 2%. So it's 1.8 to 16% raise. And so just going through some of them, like we have a 3% raise, we have a 2% raise, a 2.89, 2.87, 2.32, 2.42, 3.52, 1.79, 1.82, 2.18, 2.17, 2.68, 3.09, 2.43, 2.11, 2% exactly, 1.95, 2.3, 4.18, 2.01, 2.74, 2.89, 1.95, 16.04, and then 4.38, 3.04, 4.16, 3.19, 2.09, and 3.29. Those are the, so I mean, didn't give anybody but with the adjustments of the scale, some people's salary moved up. A lot of people stayed at that 2%. I mean, just counting the 2%, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 people stayed right at the 2% or right around it. So what we're asking is for you to approve the 2% midpoint raise along with some of the adjustments for the scale. And again, you know, just to go back over the days that changed, our network administrator went from 235 to 226. Our elementary counselor went from 210 to 203. Our speech pathologist went from 200 to 192. Our assistant principals at the elementary went from 215 to 210. The junior high went from 215 to 210. The band director went from 208 to 210. And then the director of technology went from 215 to 226. So those are just some of the days that we changed, and we're just trying to get in line because we were paying them a salary and asking for more days, and we weren't really matching up with what schools like us, Region 3 schools, and competing schools were paying. Any questions?
I'm really proud of what we did because this is, and we shared this with all campus admins to show them that, because everybody feels, it says, how do you do what you do? How do you pick these numbers? And to show them that, hey, our goal is to make sure that you're compensated like anybody else. And as soon as we showed them the process that we went to determine this, it opened up everybody's eyes. And they realized that what we're trying to do is we're you know, this is a great place to work, but we want to make sure that, you know, we're never going to be able to pay what Katie can pay. But we definitely have to be cognizant of everybody around us. Because I don't want to ever lose good people to somebody very close to us. So some of these, because we moved the scale to be more reflective of the average of everybody around us, they got a greater than a 2% bump because the scale, we equalized the scale. But we had never looked at all the scales like this before. So kudos to Scott for doing all this, because this is the first time that we've done this. And our goal is to be able to give salary letters to all our admin within the week.
And we're still probably not exactly where we need to be, but we're way closer. I mean, way closer, because we're getting to where we need to be, a year from now. That's what we want. Our goal is to start getting ahead and start being, exactly where we need to be. Because you saw some of the scales where, $500 less, we're, in that area, but we're in the ballpark. We're in the ballpark and we're a lot closer than we were. We're not gonna lose, we're still gonna lose some people to Katie, but, we're gonna lose some of the good ones to Katie, but, it's one of those things we gotta.
Good one's a relative term here.
We've gotta try to compete with everybody around us. I mean, that's our goal. We can't just lose people to the surrounding schools just because we're not competitive.
So we do this and we approve this, and then let's say there's some who I would say are lower than what I would prefer. When does that adjustment happen? So for instance, I'm gonna pick on you, but I do what he does, and I've talked to you about this, but I don't feel like his scale is where he should be for what he does for this campus. And that's my personal opinion, but what happens to someone like him? I mean, if we have to replace someone in his position, I do what he does, so I know what the scale's like.
Agreed.
So that's just my comment.
So Scott and I had this conversation, and our goal is to, within 2 years, to be able to get everybody where we want to get them. And we had never done this before, and if we would have done that, it would have been a significant, and not just Scott.
Sure.
But everyone.
Right.
Myself included, everybody. It would be a significant rise. We're afraid of the amount of money that we're going to be getting.
Sure.
I want to say that this was what we felt was a safe play. I know he's tighter than I am, but when he came to me and I said, Scotty, can we do this? And he said, in his way, yes. Which didn't inspire the super amount of confidence. But our goal is we will feel more confident next year, and our view is that because there's a few people that we need to move up, and our goal is to be able to do that because they're a little bit higher in years. They're further along on the scale, so they get over the 2% bump.
Because of their experience.
Right. Whereas a lot of people would be, if they have too much experience, they don't get a 2% bump. But we do, because we changed the scale. So the way and we made a significant change everywhere. Our goal is, when we come back to you next year, is that we should be above on all of those.
Right, we want to stay conservative because we got two more scales that we want to look at next month. And so.
As part of this, it hadn't been messed with in a while, correct?
It hasn't been messed with in a while. We adjusted when it was about 3 years ago.
Yeah.
I think we adjusted it some, but again, it was just to the scale. It wasn't really necessarily to the people's salary. This time we adjusted both. We really.
It wasn't this extensive.
Right. It was more the scale, some salaries, but not very many. It was more just the scale, to try to move the scale a little bit. So this one's trying to move the scale, get the scale where it needs to be this year. We moved some of the salaries where they need to be, and then hopefully, funding willing, we can move it again next year. It's the same thing coming up. We got a big one coming up next month.
Yeah, because we, the same thing is what we did here, we want to do with teachers, right? That's our whole goal, and that's going to be a significant change too. So knowing that, we feel that we're comfortable being safe here, knowing that our goal is to move.
At the end of the day, we're not a for-profit business, so that money should go to the kids, the facilities, and the teachers and the admins. That's where that money should go, and hopefully, when you have no more money, then it needs to go to our people. That's what it's for. It's not to be put into a savings account, so I would rather go to the people and the kids and the facilities. That's what it's for. It'd be different if we were a business, but kind of are, but we're not a for-profit business, right?
Correct. Our goal is to be more transparent. Is to let everybody know why we do what we do and how we do what we do, and then from that, be able to compete fairly. And I think that we're taking good first steps. I'm very happy.
Like I said, the teacher one coming up is a big one.
Thank you for adjusting.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, thank you. Anybody have anything else? If not, we'll need a motion for approval.
I'll move we approve the administrative pay scale adjustment as presented.
Scott, June 2nd, all in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign, motion carries. Bring us to letter B, discussion of possible action to approve instructional materials allotment and TEKS certification for the 2021-2022 school year.
So I'm going to actually have Camilla present this, because this is something that every year you have to do, and in the future our goal is to always have this in the consent agenda, because this is one of those things that TEA says you got to approve, that you're teaching the TEKS, but they change, so I'm going to have Camilla kind of explain what happened.
Right, so on Thursday, or when it was, this was Wednesday, we got an email from TEA. They had changed their process, and so they presented us with the tool, the spreadsheet that you see in your packet, with the instructional materials allotment, the textbooks and so forth that we cover all the TEKS with, and have a discussion with you guys and hopefully an approval of that, and then I will go back and submit an electronic form to TEA stating that you guys have hopefully approved. This is an annual process where the Board of Trustees is required to approve the district's technology and instructional materials allotment for expenses allowed by the Texas Education Code. And it also, the board is to approve that materials utilized by the allotment must collectively cover all elements of the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills for the subjects and grade levels identified. And so at this time, I would ask for you guys to discuss and approve the IMA allotment and TEKS certification. Any questions or anything?
If not, we'll need a motion.
I move to approve the instructional materials allotment and TEKS certification for the 2021-2022 school year as presented.
Scott seconds, all in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign, motion carries. With that, we'll move on to closed session. So, this board will now adjourn in an executive session as authorized by Texas Open Meetings Act, Government Code Section 551-001. Okay, we'll now consider action on closed session agenda items. Letter A, consider action on appointment, employment, evaluation, reassignment, duties, discipline, or dismissal of employees.
I move to approve a one-year probationary contract for the 2021-2022 school year to Marlene Ramirez, teacher. A one-year probationary contract for the 2021-2022 school year to Lindsay Kubos, teacher. And a one-year probationary contract for the 2021-2022 school year to Kendra Patch, teacher.
Dorothy makes a motion. Scott will second. All in favor, raise your right hand. Same, all opposed, same sign. Motion carries. With that, there is no further business. Meeting adjourned.